Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again it is Sunday, and that means it is time for the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. And this week's question deals with the Supreme Court and an upcoming case that they have agreed to hear about the Second Amendment. So let's dive right into the question and get your results, and then let's talk about it. Great news broke this week when a federal judge struck down the 3 decades old California assault weapons ban. However, we all know this ruling will get appealed to a full judge panel on the Ninth Circuit and probably get overturned, which would set it up for a possible Supreme Court hearing. This got me wondering about the current Second Amendment case that is already before the court. Being a Second Amendment focused channel, I like to think I know how a majority of my viewers and subscribers would like to see them rule in this case. But if you take your hopes and emotions out of the equation, what do you feel the real outcome of the case will be? Pro 2A, anti 2A, and with a broad or narrow ruling? And so if you're unfamiliar with the case that I'm talking about, it's the New York Pistol and Rifle Association versus Corlett. Go check this out. I put a link in the actual poll question itself so you guys can go read about it, and also Google it. There's a number of pro-Second Amendment advocacy groups that are also filing Friends of the Court briefs on all of this. It could be a huge case if the Supreme Court rules in a pro-Second Amendment way, but it could also be ruled in a very narrow way, which means we don't really advance the ball one way or the other. We like to think that the Second Amendment right now is protected in the Supreme Court because we have a majority of conservative justices. But as we have learned in many cases in the past, a few of those justices are kind of squishy. So depending on the outcome and who votes for it and who writes the opinion, could be a narrow ruling or a broad ruling, who knows. But what's important is that this is the first Second Amendment case the court has taken in over 10 years. So now that you guys know a little background about this, let's take a look at the results. With only 549 votes this week in the poll, we have Pro 2A with a broad ruling. Landmark case striking down many laws, 26%. Then we have Pro 2A with a narrow ruling, only dealing with the issue of the case, 50%. Then neither or no ruling, case will be ruled moot or not ruled on, 14%. Anti-2A with narrow ruling, only dealing with the issue of the case, 6%. And anti-2A with broad ruling, dismantling the Second Amendment for generations, 4%. So as you can see, with 76% of the vote, most of my viewers and subscribers have a pretty positive outlook on what's going to happen here. So whether it be a broad ruling or a narrow ruling, they're saying it is going to be pro-Second Amendment. And I actually agree with them. This is going to be one of the times where I'm actually going to vote in the majority and go with the second option, but I'll talk about that in a moment. So I definitely think there's enough pro-Second Amendment justices on the court. This ruling is going to go our way. But what we're really waiting on is how broad that ruling can be. What actually goes on behind Supreme Court doors sometimes can be a mystery to most Americans because none of it is really documented. All we know is how they vote and how the rules are of the court. So for example, when they vote on the outcome of the case, if the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is in the majority, he gets to decide who writes the opinion. And that's one of the things that could be interesting about this case. So for example, if it's going to go down to, let's say, a 5-4 decision or a 6-4 decision, most likely. If it goes to 6-4, John Roberts, who may not want to vote in the majority, might vote in the majority because it would allow him to write the opinion or decide who writes the opinion. Therefore, that person he knows, or even himself, could say, I'm only going to narrowly tailor this opinion to just this case and not give it a broad ruling across the board. However, we know that if Associate Justice Thomas would write this, he would give a broad ruling. For years, he's been saying that the Second Amendment is treated as a second-class right, and he's been a big proponent in trying to get more Second Amendment cases brought before the court. So let's break this down and let's talk about each one of these options. So we have Pro 2A with a broad ruling, landmark case striking down many laws. Now, of course, I know many people on this channel, this is the way that they want the court to go. So for example, getting Justice Thomas to write this broad ruling saying, you know what, we're going to go against the state of New York, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a better test that all of the lower courts, the circuit courts and the district courts, must follow when it comes to adjudicating Second Amendment infringements. Right now, many cases are adjudicated on what is referred to as intermediate scrutiny. It's not the highest level of scrutiny that pretty much every enumerated constitutional right is held to, which means the government has to show a true public safety and interest to infringe upon that right. It just can't be arbitrary based off of feelings. But the Second Amendment is allowed to be done this way. Even though in the landmark cases of Heller and McDonald, they used strict scrutiny, the way that they decided to have the test administered or the examples that they gave were not that strong and compelling to the lower courts. So this is a way that Justice Thomas can have this mistake corrected. And I know I would like to feel that this is the way it's going to go, but my mind says it's not. So my heart says yes, my mind says unfortunately we have too many squishes on the court that don't want to ruffle too many feathers. And so that brings us to Pro 2A with a narrow ruling only dealing with the issues of the case. Now, as I mentioned, if Justice John Roberts decides to vote in the majority of this and he doesn't really feel strongly about this issue, he can narrowly tailor this opinion saying, well, we are going to vote in a Pro 2A manner. However, this ruling is only going to deal with New York and the licenses to carry and how they carry handguns and all that kind of stuff, and not have any implications across the board. So this is a way that they can say, we're Pro 2A, but they're not really Pro 2A because they don't really change the landscape and the chessboard of gun politics across the country like many of us are hoping. This is actually the one that I personally would have voted for. Then we have neither or no ruling. The case will be ruled moot or not ruled on. This is the one I'm actually the most worried about because New York, or the city of New York, has already had a case go before the court. They immediately changed the laws knowing the court was going to rule against them and then argued it's now moot, we've changed the laws. This is actually a very dangerous precedent. It means that until the case reaches the court, any jurisdiction can just infringe upon your rights. And then once it gets before the court, we go, oh, we changed the law, we changed the law, see, rule it moot. And the court goes, okay, it's moot. And then as soon as it's ruled moot, they go, we're going to reinstitute the law again. And you have to fight the whole thing all the way to the court, which can take years and millions of dollars in legal fees. I don't like this. I think even if a jurisdiction changes the law after it goes to the court, it still needs to be ruled on so they can't go back. But this is one of my fears because it's already happened in the past. So who knows, maybe the justices thought at the time that was the best Second Amendment case they could take and then said, you know what, maybe there's something else coming down the pipe that we can use and it would be better for a broad ruling. We'll go ahead and rule this one moot and wait for a better case. Who knows? As I said, the discussions behind closed doors are not public record like it is with the Congress. Then we have anti-2A with a narrow ruling only dealing with the issue of the case. Now, this is one that is a possibility. As I said, there's a lot of squishes on there. If it was in this manner, I think it'd be a 5-4 decision anti-Second Amendment. But I really don't see that one happening. But if that did happen, I wouldn't worry about it too much because the ruling would be very narrow, and New York is already a bastion of anti-gun laws anyway. And then finally we have anti-2A with a broad ruling dismantling the Second Amendment for generations. Only 4%, and that's what I would say is the least likely outcome of this. Now, I know that the court was made up by other justices, and if, let's just say, Donald Trump had not been elected president way back in 2016, Hillary Clinton could have replaced 3 justices and altered the court forever, and we could have gotten a Second Amendment ruling saying the Second Amendment is a collective right, which there's no other right in the Constitution that's a collective right. But anyway, they would have ruled that way and say it is not an individual's right, and therefore they can infringe upon it as much as you want in any state or jurisdiction, and that would have been horrible. But I really don't think that's going to happen, but that, of course, is the worst case scenario. So that's my thoughts and opinions on this. You guys know where I would have come down if I voted on this, but let's see what your comments of the week. I always like to read the top 5 comments. And so with the top comment of the week, we have Sean White, who says, not a fan of politics in general. It's sad we even have to worry about our rights or fight to get them back. As the saying goes, you can vote yourself into tyranny, but you have to shoot your way out. That's the way it is. It's really easy for a dictator or someone with very malicious intent to come in and say, vote for me, I'll do this, I'll do that. Just give me your rights and I'll do this for you. I'll give you free money. I'll do this. I'll take the rich and I'll soak them for everything they're worth and give you this. I'll protect you. And everyone votes for it. But then if people don't want it again, they're like, well, I don't want it. I want to vote against it. They're like, nope, you can't now because now I have all the power. So you got to shoot your way out and have another grand revolution. Now, obviously, that's what we're trying to avoid here. And there's a lot of checks and balances in our system, but that's why the Second Amendment exists. Next up, we have Richard Boone, who says, if it makes it and it is heard by the Supreme Court, I have super high expectations. We just need to get it there and be heard. Rick. Well, luckily, it's already going to be heard. Well, it's on the docket. They've already said they're going to take it. And my personal opinion is because they've already ruled one as moot or one case in the past as moot, they are going to hear this. They're not going to do that 2 times in a row. They know some clarification and guidance has to be issued on how Second Amendment cases in the lower courts have to be adjudicated. So I definitely think it's going to happen. How it ends, I don't know. Next up, we have, I picked Pro 2A. If this stuff is fought correctly, we will see victory. I have high hopes, but low expectations. And you know, I think that sums up my stance as well. I have high hopes. I look and go, oh my gosh, we have the most important case, Second Amendment case we've had in over a decade, going in front of a Supreme Court that in theory is 6-3 conservative. But who knows? As I said, there's just too many squishes in there that are all worried about their legacies. And they might vote in the neutral or the negative just because now they're on the court. They don't ever have to worry about defending their stances ever again. And they can just say, well, we kept the Supreme Court intact. We kept it apolitical. We got rid of the Second Amendment, but we made sure that the Supreme Court wasn't political and we didn't advance anything. That's just the way some of those justices think, and I think John Roberts is one of them. He has been honestly the biggest disappointment in my lifetime on the court. Then we have Thomas Garrison, who says, well, the Supreme Court hasn't had a good track record with even accepting 2A cases, so... Well, I understand his hesitation there. I kind of agree with him. Well, the fact that they finally got one means that maybe they're going to rule in the affirmative, because when it comes to the behind the closed doors voting, we do know for a case to go before the court and to be docketed, 4 justices have to be willing to take the case. But there's some political dealings with that. So 4 is not a majority, but they wouldn't take the case if they know a 5th justice is not going to vote with them. So they're very careful. So that's why in the past, when it came to 2A cases that were clearly going to be overturned, they were shot down because maybe 3 or 4 justices wanted to take it, but they weren't sure how another justice would vote, most likely John Roberts. So they would vote and say, we're not going to take it, because they were waiting for the court's makeup to change or a better case that would be more cut and dry. And then finally, we have Bill L., who says, I think they will walk softly on the cases coming up, but I would love to see them carry a big stick. And of course, that's kind of paraphrasing Theodore Roosevelt, and I completely agree with him. It looks like everybody here is on the same page. We all have high hopes, but I think we all are realists around here, and we're kind of anticipating it to be a narrow ruling and not really advance the Second Amendment. But who knows? Lightning has struck before, and maybe it will again. So there you go. So that is This Week in Gun News, my thoughts and your responses. So if you guys want to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab on my YouTube channel. I will also link to it in the description below, so you guys can go there and check out what next week's question is. And next week's question is going to deal with summer carry. As you can see, I'm in a little summer attire here, enjoying the hot, hot summer of Texas. But I'm going to ask you guys, when it comes to different seasons, do you carry different guns or carry in a different way? Some people think it's about training. Some people like consistency. Some people want to carry bigger guns when they can hide it better with more clothes. But what is your opinion? What do you think is best, and what is your style? So go over there and vote now. And of course, don't forget to comment and like other people's comments so we can get the top rated comments of the week. So there you go, the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. I always enjoy making these and interacting with you and seeing where you guys stand on these issues. So let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.